Pleasure versus happiness, the subtle yet profound difference. What makes life truly fulfilling? Is it the fleeting rush of pleasure when you achieve a goal, taste something delicious, or feel a moment of excitement? Or is it something deeper, something that stays with you even when the excitement fades away? In a world obsessed with instant gratification, we often confuse pleasure with happiness, chasing one while unknowingly longing for the other. But are they really the same? Can the pursuit of one lead us away from the other? Today we'll unravel this mystery. Let's take a closer look at the subtle yet profound difference between pleasure and happiness, two forces that shape every decision we make, yet often leave us questioning the meaning of our choices. Pleasure is the immediate and transient feeling of enjoyment or satisfaction that arises when our senses, desires, or needs are fulfilled. It is often tied to physical or emotional experiences that bring a sense of gratification. Common sources of pleasure include eating a delicious meal, listening to music, achieving a goal, or even engaging in simple activities like relaxation. From a psychological standpoint, pleasure is closely linked to the brain's reward system. When we encounter something pleasurable, our brain releases chemicals such as dopamine, which create a sense of reward and motivate us to repeat the behavior. This biological mechanism ensures that we seek experiences that are beneficial for survival, like eating or forming social bonds, but it can also lead to overindulgence or addiction when pleasure becomes the sole focus. In philosophy, pleasure has been explored as a fundamental aspect of human motivation. For instance, Epicurus, a Greek philosopher, viewed pleasure as the ultimate good, but he distinguished between fleeting physical pleasures and more sustainable pleasures of the mind, like tranquility and freedom from anxiety. In contrast, philosophers like Plato criticized the pursuit of physical pleasures, considering them distractions from higher intellectual and spiritual goals. Pleasure can be classified into different types. 1. Physical pleasure, derived from the senses, such as taste, touch, or smell. Examples include enjoying a meal or a warm bath. 2. Emotional pleasure, experiences that bring joy or comfort, like laughter, love, or recognition from others. 3. Intellectual pleasure, the satisfaction that comes from learning, solving problems, or engaging in creative activities. 4. Social pleasure, enjoyment from social interactions, connections, or community involvement. Pleasure is inherently momentary. It is tied to specific stimuli or actions, and often fades when the stimulus is removed. For instance, the pleasure of eating a dessert diminishes as soon as the dessert is finished. While it brings temporary joy, it doesn't necessarily lead to deeper fulfillment or meaning. In its essence, pleasure is about indulgence in the present moment. It serves as a motivator and a reward, but is not designed to provide long-term satisfaction. It can enrich life in small doses, but over-reliance on pleasure may lead to emptiness when the underlying source of enjoyment fades. Defining happiness. Happiness is a profound and enduring state of well-being that transcends fleeting emotions or external circumstances. Unlike momentary feelings of pleasure, happiness reflects a sense of contentment, fulfillment, and inner peace. It often arises when an individual's life aligns with their values, goals, and purpose. From a psychological perspective, happiness is considered a holistic state that combines positive emotions, life satisfaction, and a sense of meaning. It can be broken down into two main categories. 1. Hedonic happiness, focused on maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. This is about feeling good and enjoying life's comforts. 2. Eudaimonic happiness, rooted in living a meaningful life, fulfilling one's potential and contributing to a greater good. This concept originates from Aristotle's idea of eudaimonia, where happiness is the result of living virtuously and achieving self-realization. In philosophy, happiness has been a central theme. Aristotle defined happiness as the ultimate goal of human life, achieved through practicing virtue and living in accordance with reason. Immanuel Kant viewed happiness as a subjective experience, but believed that true fulfillment comes from moral actions rather than the pursuit of happiness itself. John Stuart Mill emphasized that happiness involves both higher intellectual pleasures and a sense of moral duty, rather than purely sensory pleasures. From a spiritual perspective, happiness is often connected to inner peace and harmony. Many religious and spiritual traditions emphasize that true happiness comes from letting go of attachment, practicing gratitude and fostering love and compassion for others. Happiness can be shaped by 1. Internal factors: personal mindset, emotional resilience, and self-awareness. 2. External factors: relationships, accomplishments, and environmental circumstances. Characteristics of happiness: sustainable. Unlike pleasure, happiness is not a fleeting emotion, but a lasting state that can endure despite life's challenges. Holistic. It encompasses emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Independent. While external events can influence happiness, it is largely cultivated from within through self-reflection, gratitude, and personal growth. Happiness is not just about the absence of pain or difficulty, it is about finding meaning in life and maintaining a sense of balance and gratitude, even in the face of challenges. It provides the foundation for a fulfilling life and serves as a guide for personal and ethical choices. Differences between pleasure and happiness. 1. Nature and duration. Pleasure is a temporary and immediate feeling arising from specific stimuli such as sensory experiences or emotional gratification. It fades once the stimulus is removed. Happiness, on the other hand, is a lasting state of well-being and contentment that persists over time, even in the absence of external triggers. It is more enduring and stable. 2. Source. Pleasure is often external, relying on external factors like material possessions, achievements, or sensory stimulation. It is tied to the fulfillment of desires or needs. Happiness is largely internal, influenced by mindset, emotional health, and alignment with personal values. It is less dependent on external circumstances and more about inner peace and satisfaction. 3. Purpose and outcome. The pursuit of pleasure is often moment-focused, driven by the desire to experience immediate gratification or avoid discomfort. The pursuit of happiness involves long-term goals and meaningful achievements, often requiring patience, effort, and sacrifice for deeper fulfillment. 4. Psychological mechanisms. Pleasure activates the brain's reward system, particularly the release of dopamine, which reinforces behaviors associated with enjoyment and short-term rewards. Happiness engages broader neurological and psychological systems, including serotonin levels in the prefrontal cortex, which are linked to emotional regulation, meaning-making, and long-term satisfaction. 5. Impact on behavior. Pleasure can lead to repetitive behavior, sometimes resulting in addiction or unhealthy habits when excessively sought. Happiness promotes balance, emotional resilience, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with a sense of purpose and positivity. 6. Dependence on circumstances. Pleasure is highly situational and often influenced by external factors such as wealth, status, or physical comfort. Happiness, while it can be influenced by circumstances, is primarily an internal state shaped by personal attitudes, emotional intelligence, and perspective. Similarities between pleasure and happiness. 1. Positive emotional states. Both pleasure and happiness involve positive emotions and contribute to overall well-being, though in different ways. They are both essential for human experience and play important roles in mental health. 2. Motivational role. Both act as motivators in life. Pleasure encourages immediate action for gratification, while happiness motivates individuals to pursue meaningful goals and maintain balance over time. 3. Interdependence. While distinct, pleasure and happiness are not mutually exclusive. Pleasurable experiences can contribute to happiness when they align with one's values or foster meaningful connections. Similarly, a happy life often includes moments of pleasure as part of a well-rounded existence. 4. Neurological overlap. Though their mechanisms differ, both pleasure and happiness are processed in the brain, involving neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These chemicals influence mood and create rewarding experiences. Number 5. Subjective experience. Both are deeply personal and subjective, varying significantly from one individual to another based on personality, upbringing, culture, and personal goals. Pleasure as a survival mechanism. From an evolutionary standpoint, pleasure drives behaviors essential for survival, such as eating, reproduction, and social bonding. It ensures that individuals seek out activities necessary for their well-being, but its fleeting nature prevents overindulgence in any one activity. Happiness as a psychological resilience tool. Happiness contributes to emotional and mental resilience. Studies in positive psychology highlight that happiness fosters better physical health, improved relationships, and greater productivity. Unlike pleasure, which provides short-term benefits, happiness contributes to long-term life satisfaction. Balance between the two. Research suggests that a healthy life requires a balance between pleasure and happiness. Excessive focus on pleasure can lead to emptiness and dissatisfaction, while neglecting pleasure in favor of long-term goals can result in burnout and a lack of joy. Cultural and societal influence. In modern societies, the pursuit of pleasure is often marketed as a substitute for happiness, leading to consumerism and instant gratification. However, psychological studies reveal that while material gains can provide temporary pleasure, they rarely contribute to lasting happiness. In conclusion, pleasure and happiness are but complementary aspects of human experience. Pleasure provides immediate joy and rewards, while happiness ensures long-term well-being and fulfillment. Understanding the interplay between the two allows individuals to lead a balanced and meaningful life. Aristotle viewed happiness, eudaimonia, as the ultimate goal of human life, a state achieved not through transient pleasures but through living virtuously. He believed happiness was a long-term state of fulfillment, grounded in reason and ethical living. For Aristotle, pleasure was not inherently bad, rather it was a natural part of life. However, he warned against excessive indulgence in pleasures, which he referred to as hedonism. Pleasure, in his view, was a byproduct of virtuous activities. For example, the pleasure derived from learning or helping others was aligned with a life of virtue, whereas excessive indulgence in physical pleasures could lead to imbalance and harm. Aristotle distinguished between pleasure and happiness by emphasizing that pleasure is momentary and often tied to bodily experiences, while happiness arises from living a balanced and virtuous life. He also identified two types of pleasures: higher pleasures, derived from intellectual activities and moral virtues; lower pleasures, linked to physical sensations and immediate gratification. Happiness, as Aristotle saw it, was the result of fulfilling one's potential and living in harmony with rational principles. He argued that happiness requires practicing virtue, acting in accordance with moral and intellectual virtues, striking a balance, following the golden mean between excess and deficiency, engaging in philosophy. Intellectual contemplation was the highest form of happiness for Aristotle, as it engaged the rational soul in its purest form. In summary, Aristotle placed happiness as the ultimate human good, with pleasure playing a supportive but secondary role in achieving this goal. Epicurus, 341 to 270 BCE. Epicurus is often misunderstood as a proponent of hedonism in its most indulgent form. In reality, his philosophy emphasized moderation and the pursuit of sustainable, meaningful pleasures. For Epicurus, the highest good was pleasure, but not in the form of indulgence. It was the absence of pain and disturbance, ataraxia. Epicurus categorized pleasures into 1. Natural and necessary pleasures, basic needs like food, shelter, and friendship. 2. Natural but unnecessary pleasures, luxuries that enhance life but are not essential. 3. Unnatural and unnecessary pleasures, desires like wealth and fame that can lead to dissatisfaction. While pleasure was central to Epicurean philosophy, happiness, ataraxia, was the ultimate state of contentment and mental tranquility. He believed that happiness was achieved by satisfying basic needs without excess, avoiding unnecessary desires that lead to anxiety, living a simple life focused on friendship and intellectual growth. Epicurus valued mental pleasures over physical ones, as they were more sustainable and less prone to leading to suffering. For him, happiness was a stable state, while pleasure was a transient experience that needed to be moderated. Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, rejected the idea that happiness or pleasure should be the guiding principle of moral actions. He argued that morality is based on duty and the categorical imperative, not the pursuit of personal happiness or pleasure. Kant viewed pleasure as subjective and tied to individual preferences. It lacked universal value and could not serve as the basis for ethical reasoning. He believed that the pursuit of pleasure often conflicted with moral duties and could lead to selfishness. In contrast, happiness for Kant was a legitimate goal, but secondary to moral virtue. He defined happiness as the fulfillment of one's rational and moral capacities. Kant argued that true happiness arises from acting in accordance with moral laws, fulfilling one's duty regardless of personal desires or pleasures, harmonizing one's rational will with ethical principles. Kant's emphasis was on the moral worth of actions rather than their consequences, making happiness a byproduct of a virtuous life rather than its central aim. John Stuart Mill, a utilitarian, believed in the maximization of happiness for the greatest number of people. He distinguished between pleasure and happiness, categorizing pleasures as higher and lower pleasures. Higher pleasures are intellectual and moral pursuits, which he considered superior in quality. Lower pleasures are physical or sensory pleasures, which were easier to attain but less fulfilling. Mill argued that happiness results from engaging in higher pleasures that enrich the mind and soul. He acknowledged that higher pleasures often require effort and discipline, but lead to deeper and more lasting fulfillment. For Mill, the pursuit of pleasure was part of achieving happiness, but not all pleasures were equal. He emphasized the importance of education, moral development, and social progress in promoting happiness for individuals and society. Friedrich Nietzsche viewed pleasure with skepticism, often associating it with passivity and a lack of purpose. He believed that the pursuit of pleasure could lead to mediocrity and complacency. In contrast, Nietzsche saw happiness as a byproduct of living authentically and embracing one's will to power. The drive to create, overcome challenges, and achieve greatness. For Nietzsche, happiness was not about comfort or pleasure, but about the joy that comes from struggle, self-mastery, and personal growth. Nietzsche criticized traditional notions of happiness that prioritized pleasure or contentment. He believed that true fulfillment comes from facing life's difficulties and transforming them into opportunities for growth and self-expression. Kierkegaard distinguished between aesthetic pleasure and ethical happiness. He argued that pleasure, while enjoyable, was ultimately shallow and incapable of providing lasting fulfillment. For Kierkegaard, true happiness required a leap of faith and commitment to one's moral and spiritual ideals. He emphasized the importance of living authentically and embracing individual responsibility, aligning one's life with higher ethical and spiritual principles, moving beyond the pursuit of pleasure to find meaning in existence. Kierkegaard viewed happiness as a profound and subjective experience, tied to one's relationship with the self, others, and the divine. Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905–1980, Sartre, an existentialist, argued that happiness and pleasure are subjective and tied to individual freedom and responsibility. He believed that humans are condemned to be free, meaning they must create their own meaning and values. For Sartre, pleasure was a fleeting experience that could distract individuals from their existential responsibilities. He saw happiness as the result of living authentically, taking responsibility for one's choices, and creating meaning in a world without inherent purpose. Sartre emphasized the importance of freedom in achieving happiness. He believed that true happiness arises when individuals fully embrace their freedom and live in alignment with their self-defined values and goals. Each of these philosophers offers a unique perspective on the relationship between pleasure and happiness, illustrating the complexity and depth of these fundamental aspects of human life.
Perspectives of 4 major religions on pleasure and happiness. Religions have long grappled with the concepts of pleasure and happiness, offering guidance on how individuals can live fulfilling lives while navigating desires and moral responsibilities. Below are the perspectives of 4 major world religions. Christian teachings often emphasize a distinction between worldly pleasures and spiritual joy. Pleasure, when sought selfishly or excessively, is seen as a potential distraction from God's purpose. However, Christianity does not condemn pleasure outright. Instead, it advocates for balance and the pursuit of joy, rooted in faith and righteousness. Christianity views pleasure as permissible when it aligns with God's will and moral values. For example, enjoying food, relationships, or beauty is acceptable as long as it is done with gratitude and moderation. However, hedonistic indulgence or pleasure derived from sin, such as greed or lust, is discouraged. True happiness in Christianity is described as spiritual joy or blessedness. This happiness is not dependent on external circumstances, but comes from living in accordance with God's teachings. The Beatitudes in the New Testament, Matthew 5:3-12, outline the path to spiritual happiness through humility, mercy, and righteousness. Eternal joy. True happiness is achieved through salvation and a relationship with God, leading to eternal life. Sacrifice and gratitude. Christians are encouraged to find joy in serving others and being thankful for life's blessings. Avoiding excess. The Bible warns against materialism and the fleeting nature of earthly pleasures. For example, Ecclesiastes 2:11. In Islam, both pleasure and happiness are viewed as gifts from Allah, but they must be experienced within the framework of Islamic ethics. The Quran and Hadith guide Muslims on how to balance worldly desires with spiritual duties. Pleasure. Islam acknowledges the importance of enjoying life's blessings, such as food, family, and beauty. However, excessive indulgence is discouraged, and pleasure should always be pursued in a way that aligns with halal, permissible practices. For instance, moderation in eating and drinking is emphasized, Quran 7:31. Happiness. True happiness, or sa'ada, is associated with spiritual fulfillment and living in obedience to Allah. Temporary worldly happiness is considered secondary to the eternal joy found in the afterlife. Inner peace and happiness are achieved through acts of worship, charity, and gratitude. Key teachings. 1. Balance, wasatiyah. Muslims are encouraged to balance their pursuit of worldly pleasures with spiritual obligations. 2. Gratitude, shakr. Recognizing Allah's blessings leads to contentment and happiness. 3. Eternal perspective. True happiness is achieved by seeking Allah's favor and preparing for the afterlife. Hinduism provides a nuanced understanding of pleasure, kama, and happiness, ananda, through its philosophical and spiritual frameworks. Both are seen as integral aspects of life when pursued ethically. Pleasure, kama, one of the four goals of life, purusharthas, represents the pursuit of sensual and emotional pleasure. Hinduism teaches that kama is a valid and natural desire, but it must be balanced with dharma, moral duty, and moksha, liberation, to avoid attachment and suffering. Happiness. True happiness, or ananda, is associated with spiritual awakening and unity with the divine. It is achieved by transcending material desires, realizing the eternal nature of the self, Atman. Meditation, yoga, and devotion, bhakti, are practices that guide individuals toward ananda. Key teachings. 1. Balance. Pursuing kama is acceptable, but it must not overshadow higher spiritual goals. 2. Self-realization. True happiness arises from understanding one's divine nature and living harmoniously. 3. Detachment. Hinduism encourages detachment from transient pleasures to experience eternal bliss. Buddhism focuses on the distinction between craving, tanha, and genuine happiness, sukha. The pursuit of pleasure is often seen as a cause of suffering, while true happiness is found in the cessation of desires and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. Pleasure. In Buddhism, the relentless pursuit of sensory pleasures is viewed as one of the main causes of suffering, as outlined in the Four Noble Truths. While enjoying pleasures is not inherently wrong, clinging to them leads to dissatisfaction and attachment. Happiness. True happiness, or nirvana, is achieved by transcending desires and ignorance. It involves inner peace, mindfulness, and the cessation of suffering. The Eightfold Path provides a practical guide to living a balanced and ethical life, fostering both personal and collective well-being. 1. Mindfulness. Happiness arises from living in the present moment without attachment to pleasure. 2. Compassion. Genuine happiness is enhanced by acts of kindness and empathy toward others. 3. The middle way. Avoiding extremes of indulgence and self-denial leads to a balanced and fulfilling life. While the teachings of Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism differ in approach, they all emphasize the importance of balance between enjoying life's pleasures and striving for deeper, more meaningful happiness. Pleasure is recognized as a natural part of life, but excessive indulgence is discouraged. True happiness, in all these traditions, is tied to spiritual fulfillment, ethical living, and alignment with higher principles. As we've explored, the journey to understanding the difference between pleasure and happiness is more than just a philosophical debate. It's a guide to living a meaningful and fulfilling life. While pleasure brings moments of joy, happiness lights the path toward long-lasting contentment and purpose. By reflecting on these concepts, we can make choices that not only enrich our own lives, but also contribute positively to those around us. At FactUp, our mission is to spark curiosity, challenge perspectives, and invite meaningful conversations. If you found this discussion insightful, consider supporting us in our journey to create thought-provoking content. Your support helps us delve deeper into topics like these, explore new ideas, and share knowledge with a global audience. Here's how you can help. 1. Subscribe to FactUp on YouTube for more engaging content about philosophy, history, and beliefs. 2. Like, comment, and share this video to spread the message and start conversations with others. 3. Join our community by becoming a member or contributing through our platform. Together, we can continue exploring the ideas that shape our world. Your collaboration means the world to us, and every small action makes a big difference. Let's continue to learn, grow, and question together. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next thought-provoking journey with FactUp.